Episode 213, Turning Your Mess into Your Message with Bob Smith.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
In this episode, Coach Bob Smith shares his personal journey of embracing vulnerability, healing emotional wounds, and turning life's messes into impactful messages. Through relatable stories like helping his daughter overcome fear on a roller coaster, Bob highlights the profound connections between fear, excitement, and growth. He also introduces a powerful new coaching technique that quickly addresses and resolves emotional barriers, helping individuals move forward with confidence. This inspiring conversation explores how love, understanding, and self-compassion enable us to transform our struggles into strengths. Please enjoy.
All right, everybody. We are glad to have you with us today. And today I am joined by Coach Bob Smith. Hello, Bob.
Hi, Heather.
The name that's like generic and like means a whole lot all at the same time.
It's everybody and nobody all at the same time.
I love it so much. Bob's been on before, so if you've missed some of those episodes, you should jump on and find them. But I will have him introduce himself again so we can get reacquainted. So Bob, go for it.
Hi, everybody. Bob Smith. I am the LDS Men's Life Coach. I've been coaching men for about 3 years, a little over 3 years. I love what I do. And just happy to be here with you, Heather.
Well, thank you. I am happy to be here with you as well. So Bob, what are we talking about today? We chatted a little bit and I loved the tagline, so let me hear it.
Yeah, one thought that came up for me, at least with given this last year of my life, is turning your mess into your message.
Mm.
And I don't know if anyone's ever dealt with a mess before in their life, but I've dealt with lots of messes in my life. And so how do we deal with those, right?
Yeah. Well, messes are part of our humanity, and it's why we're here, whether we want to succumb to that belief or not. But so this is a message that I think is ideal for all of us.
I've got kind of a funny story if you want me to share
Yeah.
that with you quickly about me and my cute daughter, Sydney. She's 14 at the moment. So she came to me, and this kind of ties into the mess becoming your message. She came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, we've got this band trip going to Six Flags here in December." And she was worried about what would she do when she gets to those big rides, like the Titan, which has like a 250-foot drop at 90 plus miles per hour, or Mr. Freeze or the Batman ride or whatever. Like if she got to those rides and her friends wanted her to go on them with her, but then she was too scared or didn't want to or whatever. And so I'm like, I don't know. So we kind of talked through that. I kind of went into coach brain. I didn't really coach her, but I kind of went there. Like, I wonder if there's something we could resolve there emotionally or, something along those lines. But then after that, I had the thought, hey, why not we get season passes and we just go and show up and try some of these and see how that goes. So we went there. So I bought a season passes. I took it was me and my two daughters, took them one weekend. And my one daughter, my younger daughter, who I thought would be like raring to go, let's get on these rides, let's go as fast as we can go. She was the one that was more timid, which totally surprised me. So we did a couple of kind of warm up rides. And then we went to the big one, to the Titan, which is the big one with the, 250-foot plus drop, 90 plus miles an hour. And my youngest daughter didn't want to go, but my older daughter, the one that was asking me about this, for her band trip, she was ready for it. She's like, I want to do this. Like, let's go do it. So we went and got in line. It wasn't super long. Got cleared at the front of the line, and then they shut down the ride. And so I thought we were done for the day. Like that was going to be it. It wasn't super late in the evening. I think it was about maybe 6:30 in the evening when that happened. So it was super disappointing because we were getting all geared up. She was ready to go. I was ready to go. And then we didn't end up doing it at that moment. We pulled away, did another couple of rides, one of which was it was actually a kind of a decent roller coaster that did a couple of loops upside down. So that was the first time they've ever done that. So that was kind of breaking a new barrier for them. And that was really fun. And then at that point, I checked back in on my app to see is the Titan open again? And sure enough, it was. But by this point, Sydney was like, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. And I'm like, I can appreciate that, right? It's like I've felt that before in my life. Like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this big hard thing. We're going to charge up this hill. We're going to get this done. And I'm like, come on, Sydney, let's do this. Let's, because I was like, she was committed before, and then now I'm like extra committed. Like, I really wanted to get that done that night. And so we went back over there. She was way more hesitant than I expected her to be at that point. Went back through the line, got up to the front, got on the ride, and she was nervous the whole time, but I was really trying to encourage her forward and be excited for her and help her through it. And I thought I was doing a good thing, the good dad job. Like I'm showing up for my daughter. I'm going to be strong. She's going to be strong. I'm here to support her. I'm going to hold her hand. We're going to do whatever we need to get through this ride. And then on the way up, it's like the big chug, 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 chug. It's a huge mountain to climb. I mean, it gives you plenty of time to think about the big drop that's coming. It's
Mhm.
one of the longest climbs I think of any roller coaster I've ever been on because it's such a big drop afterwards. And so we're chug, chug, chugging up, and I'm still thinking I'm doing the good dad thing. And I look over at her, and she's just bawling, like tears are just streaming down her
Oh,
face. And I think it traumatized me more than traumatized her because I'm like, did I do exactly? I feel like I'm doing the good dad thing, and I feel like I've just like done this to my daughter where she's almost like inconsolable at that point. So I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do? So then I started freaking out. And so like her freaking out was I was freaking out about that. Then we got to the very top of it and started going down. Of course, at that point, there's, nothing you can do. You just
no.
gotta like hold on and go. Her glasses almost fell off in the process. So then I saw that her glasses almost coming off. So then I grabbed them and I held them to her face and because she was still screaming. And by the end of the ride, we both got off and it was like exhilarating. I think I've still got some trauma to like overcome just from seeing her cute little face with the tears rolling
Yes.
down her
Oh
cheeks.
my gosh.
But anyway, so and maybe that's part of life too, is like, hey, we're excited and then it's like disappointed. And then we get back into it. It's like, oh, maybe we don't want to do it anymore. And then we get on it and then it's like terrifying when we're actually on the ride. So I don't know what kind of analogies or metaphors we could put towards life, but I'm sure there's something in all of this that we could.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I would never have even gotten in the line in the first place.
Oh, you got to do that. We got to
I
get
know
on
there's
those.
plenty of other things, but I have to say, one of the awesome things about an experience like that for your daughter is for sure she's going to feel like she like did something hard, right? And scary.
100%.
And
100%.
I have my kids have been put in so many situations that I think are terrifying because their father takes them to do all sorts of who knows what in on a dirt bike or down rapids, and it scares me and I'll go, but gosh, I look at them and think they're amazing and look at what they're like overcoming to do these things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, really well said too. And hopefully you got her prepped for her band trip to where she feels a little bit
Yeah.
more. I think any kind of arrow in our quiver that we can put in there that says I can do hard things and
Mm-hmm.
I can go back in my life and look at the proof of having done some of these hard things. I think it's always a good thing. I think
Absolutely.
for me at least, sometimes I forget about how many hard things I've done and maybe overcome until I have gone back and maybe reflected. It's like, well, anyone could do that. It's like, well, maybe not. Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we actually got through that in a better way than what we actually realized we did.
Yeah. So the question is, when she goes back with the band, will she do that ride again?
That is the big question. To be continued, right? I
I
guess we're gonna
know
have to
I'm
do
going to
another
need the
podcast.
follow-up. Please text me when after she returns from her band trip and let me know whether she did or didn't. And there's
I
no
am
shame either way, right? It's
no
just,
shame.
yep,
No
no
shame.
shame. Oh gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think I might
so
actually take them at Thanksgiving time too, and then I guess we'll see then if are we gonna do it.
yes.
And can I get my younger daughter to traumatize her to then traumatize me in the process as well?
How many people can we traumatize at once?
How many?
This is maybe beside the point, but since you brought up roller coasters, this is something I've actually never forgotten. I was coaching a young client one time. She's probably about, well, she was 13, so close to the age of your Sydney. And she was talking about some anxiety that she was having. And I said, can you think of a time when and I had her describe that feeling of anxiousness. And she described it to me. And then I said, when else do you get a feeling like that? And she said, oh, I for sure feel that way when I'm standing in the line of a roller coaster. And I love roller coasters. I feel that way because I'm so excited. And I was like, isn't it interesting that the exact same feeling is occurring in your body, but you're attaching different emotions to it, right? Like it feels the same way. So this enthusiasm that she had for the roller coaster ride is also that feeling is creates anxiousness in a different setting. So anyway, I just think that's it was something that I learned from a 13-year-old that was very profound for me. And I continue to try to look for areas where I'm subscribing and making something an anxious or fearful feeling when actually maybe I'm actually excited, like maybe I could flip it and be excited about it instead.
I love that. Have you ever heard of the concept? I think Dean Graciosi teaches this typically is that fear and excitement come from the same part of the brain. And so fear, all it really is excitement without the breath. And so
Mm,
that's what I've tried to talk to I mean, when I do coaching, of course, but also even with my kids to say, when you're feeling that way and it feels like I need to hold back when you know that it really is, I need to move forward. That's
hmm
when you need to take that big old deep breath and just allow that and just sit in the fear and allow that to kind of just be with you, like
hmm
embrace it, open up to it, allow it to be, it's not, it's allow it to be your counselor in that time to see if there are changes you need to make, but don't let it drive the car. So I like fear
hmm
sitting in the back seat, but don't allow it to drive the car, but really turn that in. It can turn into the excitement,
Yeah.
very quickly.
Absolutely. I haven't worked with this teenager for a couple years now, but I texted her with permission from her mom. I was like, hey, I have something I want to share with your daughter. Do you care if I text her? And I was this was a couple months ago, and I was feeling a lot of fear about something that I wanted to do. And I thought back to that coaching session with her and was reminded, oh, the same thing that you said, like, they obviously stem from the same place, fear and excitement. And I'm going to swap this and try to let excitement lead out in this situation. And I had a really profound, I don't know, breakthrough. And so I wanted to share that with her because, it was something that she helped me to understand. But
Yeah.
thank you for putting that in context there, that fear and excitement stem from the same place.
Yeah, fear is excitement without the breath. And so
Hmm
it's at least when I get scared and I'm one to hold back, I check in and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm not breathing. Like I notice that I'm not breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so
So
good.
I had a coach at one point. She did a podcast. She was teaching and leading people and going into corporations and doing trainings and all these kinds of things. And she told me that she noticed that she would have that same kind of anxiety and worry come up for her right before she went in to do this. And she said that she hoped it never went away. Like it feels like a very uncomfortable thing to just sit in and to have with us, but she
Mhm.
never wanted to go away because she knew that helped her know that this actually mattered to her, that there was actually something that was important that she was pursuing, that she was doing, that it was part of her, big dream and who she wanted to become and how she wanted to serve. So I really love that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So changing, like making your mess your message. I probably said that wrong, but that
Yeah.
was about where you were. What does that look like? And how do we even start with that? And how can we, I was going to say, how do we identify when there's actually a mess? And that's usually pretty easy for people to identify when a mess is amidst them, but maybe not always. But anyway, where do we go? How do we do that?
That's a great question. Here's something that's come up for me kind of, I've been thinking about this kind of over and over, and I put it in the context of relationships. If I can get personal for kind of a minute, is I've struggled in the relationship arena. Like I've struggled to show up in the ways that I've wanted to as a man, as a husband, as a father. And what I've noticed in that is it seems like we have one of two paths that we can take when we want to go look at ourselves and kind of put this through, maybe a microscope or really kind of uncover what's there for us. Like what was it that was stopping me from showing up in the way that I know that I wish I would have been able to. And I look at it as we can either go down the path of right and wrong, or we can go down the path of working, not working. So just to kind of put that in context is if I think about, like, for instance, let's say like a lot of the men I coach, they find themselves getting defensive with their wife. Like their wife brings up a concern. It's like, hey, I noticed that this wasn't done, or hey, I'd like this to be done differently or better, or can we talk about this problem? And you know, men often don't want to talk about the problems. They don't want problems. Like it's just one more thing that we have to fix or deal with or whatever. And then that causes women to want to pull away because they're not being seen, they're not being heard, they're not able to kind of share and express who they are and the place that they're coming from. When men, if we can sit in the place of just allowing that to be and allowing the information to flow, and then we can decide, like, where do we go from here? Once we have what's real for you, what's real for me, then how do we put this together and work together as a team in this? So what I found when it comes coming back to the right, wrong versus working, not working, what I mean by that is often, and I'll just put it from the men's perspective, just because that's who I coach and who I want to help, just because it's been such a struggle for me, is when your wife brings you something that like a concern of some kind, the men that get into that defensive kind of angry place, it's like they're taking it on themselves as automatically something that I've done wrong. So it must mean that I've done something wrong, said something wrong, showing up wrong, whatever it might be. And it has kind of this cloud of shame around it. And what that does, that shuts down the conversation, it shuts down the flow of energy, it shuts down the communication, it shuts down the connection between, the husband and the wife, in those moments. But if instead of looking at it as a right and wrong, like I did something wrong or didn't do something wrong or didn't do something I should have, can we look at it from a place of working, not working, meaning what's coming up for you, what's coming up for me, and what is working versus not working within our relationship, as opposed it's more of a place of curiosity rather than condemnation. Does that make sense as well? So
Mhm.
it's really like instead of condemning either the person or the action or saying or putting this label of kind of judgment on it, if we can open up from a place of curiosity to really look at what's real for you, what's real for me, and our facts can be two different sets of facts, but they can both be what's real for each one of us, then I think we have some place to jump from that then we can actually solve the problem as opposed to turning it into kind of this battle or this point of disconnection. It can actually be a point of connection rather than a point of disconnection. Yeah, what
Mhm.
are your thoughts, Heather, with all that?
Well, I love it for many reasons, but it's bringing up. I was just on a call with some fellow coaches, and one of the things we were discussing Terrence Real's work, and he does a lot of relationship work, and like we are relational human beings, and so we like we do work so on ourselves so that we can show up in a relationship the way that we want to. So one of my mentors, Amy Gianni, says there, well, she was quoting Terrence Rail, but she says that he says there is no reality in a relationship. It's all a subjective reality. And I thought that is such a good thing to remember, right? Like we kind of get into this battle of right and wrong a lot of times in relationships. And there is plenty of places, and this was kind of also from Terrence Rail we talked about today, but there's plenty of places where it's appropriate and important to be right and wrong, right? Like in business, and there's plenty of places where we want to be, where we need to be right and wrong about some things. But in a relationship, there's no place for right or wrong because it's just all kind of a subjective reality. And so it is important to like recognize that, yes, and to listen for what their reality is, what they heard, and to understand that our reality is different from theirs. So it isn't, it's not it's exactly what you said. Like we have to come to understand that.
Yeah, yeah. And if we can get so one way that I like to think about this too is if you think about like Adam and Eve right from the beginning, and Eve, you know, takes the fruit, eats it, offers some to Adam, he eats it, and then he discovers that he's naked. What's the first thing that he does? He runs and he hides and covers himself up with fig leaves. So I think it's really helpful to know that the idea and the concept of shame, of hiding, of don't look at me, don't peer around the corner, what if something's wrong with me? All of that kind of stuff, that's there for all of us. Like that's not a new concept. That came
Mhm.
from the beginning. And what God says and what God wants is he says, Adam, come forward and let me just see you in your nakedness. And I feel like that is the template for the foundation for not just our relationships, but for our life. Like when we can get real about what are the real facts? Where are you truly with your body? Where are you truly in your relationship with God? Where are you truly in your relationship with your wife or with your kids? Where are you truly with your money? And then how do you truly feel about those things? If we can get really, really real, which we don't want to because it's really uncomfortable typically because we want to hide and act like it's better than it is, but when we can get really, truly honest about what's there, then we have a solid foundation to work from. And I feel like that's what allows agency to take place. Like saying,
Mhm.
here's where I'm coming from in this relationship. And your wife says, well, here's where I'm coming from in this relationship. If we can be truly open, which most of us either aren't, because we're too afraid to be that, to go to that level of vulnerability and openness, or we haven't built the skill set for it, but that's where God can enter into our lives and into our relationships to really build that foundation the way that it should be built. And it's something that and the reason why I know that now is because it's something that I've struggled with and have, and that's been kind of the essence of the deep internal work that I've been doing on myself. It's almost like I'm not willing to ask my clients to do anything that I haven't done, that I haven't let out on, and really kind of gone into the dark places and cut out the darkness within me of what's there and being really open about, what's real and what really exists for me that way.
Bob, I have to share something as I'm listening to you share that this is something that you've struggled with, and that is why like you feel like you have some great tools to help other people with it. And I had this quote that I actually shared in an email this week. It's a quote from Steve Young in his book, The Law of Love. And I just feel to share it right now. He says, we don't have to be healed first in order to heal others. In fact, we can't be healed ourselves until we heal others. That means we are all wounded healers, seeking to heal others and thereby becoming whole ourselves. I think as coaches, that is like the perfect title for all of us. We are wounded healers, right? Like that is the space that we operate from. And that's why we do what we do. And so is everybody else, right? And I think what I love about coaching is that as you work with the coach who's been where you've been and knows where you've been, um, it gives you some access to some healing. And then that person that you help, your client and those who are listening who might work with the coach, you have worked with the coach, like in that space, you find healing, and then you're able to then become a wounded healer yourself. And it's such profound work to go about healing ourselves. And then there's something sacred about it. So thank you.
It's
Thank you
sure.
for being vulnerable and sharing that with us.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's an honor. It's scary. It actually took me several years of people encouraging me, including prior spouses, to say, "Hey, Bob, you really should become a coach. You really should become a coach." And I remember thinking, how could people sit in a room and like open up and like bare their soul and say what's real for them in this room of strangers, fearing all the potential judgment and like not good enough and all this kind of stuff. I couldn't even fathom it. Like it took me years even to get to the place where I was willing to go become a coach and sit in the room and be coached and allow kind of all that stuff to just be out and to be present. But the real gift and all that is, and I'm sure I know you've experienced this as well, Heather, is the gift in it is when you are able to open up, whether it be in a group, with a friend, with a coach, whatever it might be, and they don't run away from you and they can just sit in there and hold that space for you. Like it can be one of the most profoundly beautiful experiences of our life and can be one of the most freeing things that we ever experience. Is like, oh my gosh, I was just open and I just shared all this stuff that I was really scared to share, and I don't have to hide it anymore. And this person still loves me. And in fact, they love me even more deeply because now I'm even known more deeply and seen more deeply than I was before. That's the real tricker, because our brains will trick us constantly to say, don't share, don't open up, don't be vulnerable. And certainly there's times where we don't want to just, air all of it to whoever and whenever, but in those sacred spaces where it can really be caught and understood and really serve somebody else, it can be, pretty magical and pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Absolutely.
it's an honor to be able to create those kinds of spaces.
Yeah. I think it's Brene Brown who says like that, like the people that have earned the right to hear our story would probably fit like on a 1 inch square, right? Like, so I love that you say it's like we don't need to bear it to everybody, but there are people who earn that opportunity, that trust, um, and that's the work that coaches do. And I think too, you said finding somebody or working with somebody who listens to your story and like is non-judgmental. The key is for us to become that for ourselves, right? Like to that is the beginning of being able to turn a mess into our message, is to be able to love us completely and wholly, regardless of where we are in the mess of our humanity. And I think we learn that skill a lot from listening, from interacting with somebody else who is non-judgmental and will sit and listen. We can learn to be that person for us at the same time.
100%. Like I think as coaches, I think we all need to be our first client.
Mhm.
I think we need to not only, talk the talk, but we need to walk the walk. And always in any part of our journey, it always starts with us getting real about what's truly real for us, what's really coming up for us. And I'd be happy to share with you too. I've actually learned a new technique to add to my coaching
Yeah,
um,
let's do it.
repertoire. So the model, finding thoughts, exploring all that, opening up to all that stuff, it's amazing, right? But I found a new method, another method that's really amazing, that doesn't, where you don't have to find the thought that's kind of getting in the way of doing the thing that that they want to do. It's more of the emotional healing part of it too, which I think is just so critical and beautiful too. So I'll put it this way: the way I like to kind of explain it to people is, imagine that you're in elementary school and you're asked to go give a presentation in front of your class. And you get up and you start to speak and you start to go through your presentation. And you stumble along the way, you miss some words, say something silly, make a noise, whatever it might be, and your classmates start to laugh and giggle and maybe taunt a little bit. My son actually kind of experienced one of those things before, like where he actually got up and every time that he said the word or stuttered or stopped or stammered or whatever, this kid down there was supposed to ring the bell. And so then he started ringing the bell, and then the more he rings the bell, the more thrown off he is, just like I think any of us would be. I can't imagine what the teacher was thinking to allow that to be the thing, like why that was a good idea in any way. But as you can imagine, what he probably felt in that moment and what we would probably feel in that moment is embarrassment, is shame, is not good enough, all those things, right? But instead, what we really wanted to feel was maybe someone coming up and putting their arm around us or appreciating us or saying, "Hey, you did a good job." So what happens is when we have these moments in our life that are these emotionally triggering moments, we have both the problem side of it and what we want side of it. And that full cycle needs to be completed in order for that emotional healing to take place. And that's what happens in this new process that I've discovered and now been trained on. Is it's almost like pulling out, a fuse in a fuse box in your car where where the fuse breaks. That's almost like where we have an emotional experience that we don't quite know how to handle in the moment. So therefore, we have that resistance, and then it kind of breaks the circuitry, and then doesn't give us access to that part of the card, the functionality, and inside of us, it kind of stops us from having that functionality. So it's like pulling out the old fuse and installing a new fuse so that the energy can continue to flow through in the way that it was always meant to. And so it's a really powerful but simple method of taking somebody through this process and allowing all the subconscious stuff to come up and feeling both the negative side that was resisted that we didn't want to feel initially, and then feeling the completion of that on the other end. And so that's part of the healing work that I like to do with the men as well. So it's the thought finding, it's the understanding where you are, where you want to go, kind of what's in your way, the healing part of it, and then the skill building that goes along with it as well. But it's really an amazing process, and it works very, very quickly, surprisingly fast.
That's amazing. And I think extremely beneficial for men. I shouldn't say men especially, but that feeling peace and recognizing what it is you need is something that doesn't come naturally, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah. And the men that I've worked this through with, like for example, there's one client that I had that what he told me that his problem statement was, so you always start with the problem statement. What he told me his problem statement was is that he believed his wife, whenever she asked him to do something, was always treating him like a child. So you can
Mm.
imagine if that's kind of your frame of reference that you're coming from, anytime that she would come to him and ask him to do something, it would set off this triggering emotional kind of reaction that then he felt either bad or wanted to pull away or got defensive or whatever it might be. He and I worked on that one problem for about 10 or 15 minutes. And this had been going on for maybe 15 years of his marriage. And then within about 10 or 15 minutes, that was cleared for him to where he didn't experience those same things in the same way, just because he had kind of completed that circuit, if you will,
Hmm.
and healed from that process. So it can be a really powerful thing.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, Bob, I feel like we need to maybe have another, like a sequel to this at some point in time. So it's like you could demonstrate what that looks like to like take somebody full circuit, right? Like the completion process. But
Yeah, I love that. Would love
that
that.
that would be awesome. Until then, though, how can people connect with you to maybe experience that themselves?
Yeah, my website is becomethecaptain.com. That's the name of my program that I help men through. So becomethecaptain.com.
I love it. We will link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, for being a wounded healer, for being willing to help other people heal as well, and for sharing stories with us today. It's
You're
awesome.
so welcome. Thanks so much for having me, Heather. So good to see you.
Yeah, you too. We'll see you all next time. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.